These are the Paranormal Roads.
Hello everybody, this is Paranormal Roads. This is Jack.
And this is Mike.
And we're going to be doing a show about the economic collapse.
Economic collapse. This is a subject that me and Jack can't stop talking about.
Yeah, I actually didn't do any research for this at all, but I figured we talked about it so much over the past couple of years.
Right, absolutely. We've talked about it a lot. I mean, there's just, when it comes to the government and, the Fed, which deals with the money, I mean, there's just so much to talk about. The U.S. debt clock, you can go on usdebtclock.org and it'll tell you exactly to the minute how much in debt we are. And it's coming up to $18 trillion.
$18 trillion. Do you know the amount, like, per hour is like 12 million an hour we're down in debt?
Yeah, probably at the very least.
So the reason why the debt keeps going up so exponentially is because the interest on the debt, we can't afford to pay the interest no more.
Right.
So
the higher the debt, the more interest you owe, and it just spins out of control.
So,
yeah, and there's other factors involved. The unemployment rate is not good.
Yeah, and the way they calculate unemployment now, it's different than even a few years ago, where now they exclude various groups of people from the calculation. So the actual unemployment rates, I think it's like 21%.
Oh yeah,
and it's because they exclude people that don't look for work.
Right, exactly.
So
yeah,
and they exclude people that have been out of work also, or they're like they exclude the people on welfare too.
Oh right, so, yeah, they do it's the workforce participation numbers, and they're the lowest level since 1978. So you got skyrocketing debt, you got the workforce
participation. So
yeah, I mean,
it's the workforce itself's lower, and it's not only lower, but it's thinner. People, the number of full-time jobs is down. People are working part-time, and people are actually working like 2 or 3 part-time jobs just to stay ahead.
Well, as of yesterday, I looked up a few numbers. 7.1 million Americans who want full-time jobs are only working part-time. They can't find full-time jobs, or their hours are cut by their employers, which brings us to this is the economic collapse is building. It's kind
of like a dam, the government keeps building a dam, but there's like holes popping out, so they keep patching it.
Right.
So a true economic collapse will be when the dam breaks.
Absolutely. So, when the dam breaks, I like that analogy. Yep, the money bubble is about to collapse. When you see the stock market go up 250 points a day, and then the next day it goes down 350
very volatile.
Points a day, very volatile. When the stock market is very volatile, it is a sign.
Yeah.
That
the Wall Street likes it that way, though, because the rich will always make a ton of money, and then the people that are getting involved in Wall Street, the ones losing are usually the smaller people with smaller companies. So
right.
So that's
right. So what's the government doing about it? Well, they're keeping interest rates are at 0.
Yeah, it's like 0.001
right.
or something.
It's basically zero.
Basically zero.
Right. And
what that does is the banks make no money. So the banks are making no money, and we're falling further in debt.
Right. Well, remember the bank bailouts.
Yeah.
This is a long line history from the recent recession to now. The bank bailouts, they made the banks take money and hoping that the banks would lend money, but they can't force the banks to lend money.
Yeah, they can't lend. The reason why they're not lending out is because interest rates at 0%.
Right.
So they can't make any money off. It's like they're like, all right, we'll give you $20, and we're gonna give it to you, but we're gonna actually lose $5. So that's why they're not lending out money.
Right.
So.
Right. Stagnant wages. People's pay has stayed the same.
It's actually gone down because it's part-time. Because of part-time.
Right. Exactly.
They've lost hours, so they're actually losing money.
There's another hole in the dam right there.
Yeah.
And the pay has stayed the same. Things cost more.
Yep.
They say there's no inflation, but there is.
Oh, the inflation is coming through the form of like higher bills. The cost of food, I think, is up 14% this year.
Yep.
Cable bills are going up. Cell phone bills. They're raising taxes. Gasoline goes up, and then it goes down. There's I find it funny how like just a few years ago, like gas was like $1.80, and that was high.
Right.
And now it's been so high for so long. It's like within the last 2 weeks, it's gone down like 20 cents. So it's like $3.40 now.
Yeah.
And now people think that's low. Like we got so used to it being so high, and now we think a really high number is low.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so we got so used to gasoline being so high that if it drops like 10 or 15 cents, like a really high number seems really good to most people now. But
yeah, we're all excited about it. Woohoo, gas is,
But a true economist and someone that's really paying attention will notice that it should be like $1.80. And the way you see that is because the price of the barrel of oil, it's lower now than it was when it was $1.80 3 years ago.
Right.
So it should be like $1.50, but they've kept the rate up so high.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, it's not. There's a lot of companies out there that, and it goes back to these interest rates. They're making no money, so they have to. The inflation has to stay high.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah, and I mean the government. We mentioned the bank bailouts. Too big to fail. That's a problem there. We don't.
They picked and choose though. They let a few of them fail.
There should be no banks too big to fail. That's the point.
Yeah.
There used to be through the country a whole bunch of smaller banks, and if your bank couldn't keep up, your bank got thrown in the fire.
Or went bankrupt.
Right, or went bankrupt. They don't do that now. That's a problem. Remember, they bailed out GM.
Yep.
All that money they spent.
We lost. Do you have the number? How much we lost? Was it $40 billion we lost?
Oh, it was around there.
So.
Yeah. And one of my favorites, remember this, that drove all the car prices up, Cash for Clunkers. You remember that 4 or 5 years ago?
Cash for Clunkers.
Right.
They took all the old cars and they destroyed them. So it got rid of a whole market.
Right. So instead of being able to go out and buy a $500 car or a $1,000 car, you can't buy. You got to spend $10,000 for a car that has 100,000 miles.
And the people that couldn't get a new car, they just didn't get a car.
Right.
So it was just a whole business lost, because to this day it's hard to find a good price on a used car. A used car now is a few $1,000s, where, like you said a few years ago, you get one for. I used to always buy used cars. I used to buy them for like $500.
Sure.
You don't see that anymore.
Right, and then you fix them up, and don't forget about the huge stimulus packages. Remember that 4 or 5 years ago?
Two of them.
Right. $787 billion, supposedly for shovel-ready projects, and then a few years later, they come out and say, "Well, they weren't as shovel-ready as we thought."
Well, they passed these bills, these surplus bills, and they're supposed to go for certain things. And if you look at what they spent the money on, it would just make you rip your hair out. Like the Solyndra, that energy company. Right. They got a lot of the money. Was it $500 million they got?
Yep.
And then
they closed.
They went bankrupt.
Yep.
So it was just money down the drain. And if you look at who these people that run these companies, they're like shell companies because they're friends of these politicians.
Right.
So these companies open up, and then they get all this money, and then they don't go bankrupt. They just close down the shop. And then these friends of these politicians, they throw money back to the politicians so that they can use them for campaigns. And their friends are making a ton of money, so it's a bunch of shaking hands.
Oh yeah, well you remember the golden parachutes after the stimulus package. Remember the same
Goldman Sachs,
the same CEOs of the banks and the corporations that drove us into a recession. The same people that screwed it up. They fired them, but they all got golden parachutes. They were getting 100, 200, 300 million dollars.
Yeah.
I'd love to have,
being fired. Oh, you're fired, but here's $100 million.
Right, exactly.
So,
and that was our tax money, and there's nothing we can do about it.
It makes no sense.
So we basically, gave out golden parachutes
So what is
for people that drove us into the
what
ground?
What is keeping the economic collapse from coming right now? It's the printing of money.
Right, the printing of money. You're absolutely right. So that adds it.
It just keeps adding
stretches
to the
dollar.
pile.
It
Yeah.
add another hole in the dam, another bean on the pile.
It makes a dollar worth less.
Right. Well, they're trying to keep the interest rates low. One or two things could happen, and the Fed is trying. They keep interest rates low. This could go either way. Inflation can happen, or deflation can happen.
Yeah.
So the Fed is like a seesaw, and they're in the middle, holding up the board.
Yeah.
And on one side is inflation, and the other side is deflation.
Yeah, so they're deflating the dollar, meaning the dollar is not worth as much. And at the other end, see, they're trying to balance it so people don't notice. So at the other one end, like Mike's saying, they make the dollar worth a little bit less on one end, and then at the other end, they raise prices on goods and stuff.
Right, they're trying to balance it out. That's exactly what they're doing, Jack. And how long can we do it? Hard to say.
Yeah, but if one end tips bigger than the other, that's when the economy will collapse.
Right. Well, confidence, when it comes to the economy, especially the stock market, confidence is everything. As long as everybody thinks it's okay,
Yep.
it'll be okay. But once people see panic start to set in, they see a big sell-off, or the Fed raises the interest rates, then the pile gets very heavy, the scales are tipped, and that's when you get economic collapse.
Yep. So on one end you have deflation of the dollar, and
Right.
the other end you have inflation. So if for the inflation part to tip the scale, the interest rates, inflation rates, will go sky high.
Right.
So let's say you're paying $4.50 for a gallon of milk. If the super inflation, it would be like $15 for a gallon of milk, or
Right.
we're paying like $3.50 right now for gas. It would be like $10.
Right.
So
And that's just a normal work day, a normal everything's okay. What happens if Ebola breaks out and people don't go to work?
oh yeah,
People don't go to work. They don't buy items. They're afraid to go to Walmart. They're afraid to go to the shopping centers. They're afraid to go to malls. What if that happens? That's more holes in the dam. That's more on the pile.
Yep.
It's getting closer and closer and closer to economic collapse. How close are we? Hard to say. But there is... the government is doing their own predictions on economic collapse. You think the government's just trying to be all happy. They're worried about it in the background.
I'm not going to tell anyone though.
There is a CIA analyst, and I just read this yesterday, warning people that he believes the next Great Depression is right around the corner. His name is Jim Rickards. He's a financial, and I'm quoting this from the article, this is his job title, Financial Threat and Asymmetric Warfare Advisor for the CIA. So he brings warfare and money together, what might cause, and he added this, what he knows, to predicting. So he's predicting an economic collapse, and this guy's from the CIA.
And CIA, I don't know if people may not like them or not, but they do bring some of the best minds
Yeah,
in
they
that
do.
organization.
Right. He is saying that America should be ready, be preparing for $100 trillion financial catastrophe. And this guy's from the CIA.
So what's that really mean, 100 trillion?
I believe the article said that like 70 trillion would be lost just in the stock market alone. The stock market would crash, and that would be 70 trillion.
So we are like 20, we're like 19 trillion in debt, and when the stock market collapses, it'll take us up to like 100 trillion.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, the Federal Reserve has what they call, it's called a misery index, which adds the true unemployment rate, like we were talking about earlier, not the fudged numbers,
Yeah.
which is like 5.9, which is ridiculous.
yeah.
Right? It takes that, the true number, with the true inflation rate, which the government's not telling you.
Yeah, because they calculate inflation differently. They hold out food. They don't include food and like what's the other products they don't include? I know it's food. Like products that are not, like the inflation rate on these products are not put in the calculation for inflation.
Oh, exactly. It only goes like the collapse. Let's say the collapse happens over a 2-day period. That's 100 trillion. It doesn't go to include everything else that fall. It's not the dominoes that follow after. That's just the first domino is 100 trillion. God knows the numbers are probably too big to even comprehend. Even if they could be calculated, they probably couldn't. But this guy, Jim Rickards, contends that the Fed has altered the results as to not cause panic and riots. They don't want people to know.
No, they don't.
Right.
They don't. As long as people go to work and they pay their taxes and they pay their bills, they want people just to get used to. We normalize ourselves. That's what they do. Like, let's balance everything out. Let's get people normal with $3.50 gas.
Right.
Eventually, let's get people normal with $5 gas, because that's going to come down the road too.
Sure.
So
yeah, they're priming us. Just a few years ago we had $2 gas. That was high, but it's up $3-4. But they took this misery index, and the numbers are higher than right before the Great Depression. They took this misery index and they put it with the numbers right before the Great Depression, and they were high.
yeah.
The numbers now in the current economy state is higher. Like, there's a higher probability that this is going to happen than the Great Depression happening.
Oh yeah, and like I wrote some notes down. I actually wrote that down. Like, the only thing that's keeping us from going under is we have the ability to print our money. Like before, and the reason for that is because the U.S. dollar is the world currency.
Right.
So I think it was 70. Was it 77? I can't remember the exact year, but during the Great Depression, the England sterling was the world currency.
Right.
So England had the ability to print money. They could print all the money they wanted. Where like today, U.S. dollar is the world currency for business. So we have the ability to print as much money as we want. Now, during the Great Depression, we didn't have that ability. We went on a gold standard. They could only print as much money as gold they had in the reserve. We don't do that now. So every time they print money, that's why Mike was saying the value of the dollar gets weaker and weaker, because we're printing it. It's just worthless paper.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's exactly what we're liquefying the money to be useless.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories in the during the Roman Empire.
I haven't written that down too, Rome.
Oh, did you write that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have that in my notes. I just thought about that. What the Romans used to hand out a coin, and the coin was silver or whatever, and that was was actual money. Silver was like we had a gold standard. That was their silver standard.
They had silver.
Right. So as the money got less and less, they would take a pair of shears and they would cut. That's how they would devalue their money. They would cut a little bit off the coin, and they cut the coin, and they cut the coin, and the coin got smaller and smaller and smaller. Right? And what happened when the coin got so small? It was worthless.
Yep.
It was
physically worthless.
It was physically worthless. And at the end, the Roman government would not accept their own money for taxes. They went back to trade and barter. They're like, you owe us 100 pieces of silver, but we don't accept our silver because it's worthless. We're going to take your goats or your cows. That's what could happen to us. Our money trim away till it's...
That has happened in the U.S. Great Depression, they took everybody's gold.
Right.
They took it.
That's true.
And if something like that happened today, what would happen for an economic collapse is if the rest of the world stopped using the dollar as the world currency. Because that happened to England. So I wrote down economic... People say it would never happen. And I wrote down it happened to Britain, it happened to Rome. Japan was never on top, but they collapsed in the 90s. China, they keep their people poor. That's how they keep their economy going. They keep the whole nation poor except for the elite.
Right.
So there's ways to stop an economic collapse, and that's one way China's done is they just keep everybody poor.
Yeah.
So, but the U.S., we had a Great Depression already, but now we print the money. We have the power of printing. If we lose that power, the economy will fall so fast.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like we said, it might not be just a normal occurrence. The whole world can go, man, your money's really not good. We're going to use the euro now.
Yeah.
We're going to use the yen. If the countries got together and said that, it would just pull the carpet right down under. Financial collapse would come like the next day.
Yeah, and they wouldn't just take your gold because there's no gold standard. So what would they take from you? They would take all your food. They would take your possessions, anything that would sustain the people at top.
Right.
That's why, they actually wrote a law 2 years ago, for people that hoard. There's a lot of people that over the years, it's getting really popular. They've made shows about it where people are survivalists now. They have stockpiles of food.
Sure.
They have 5 years worth of food, dehydrated. They actually passed a law that if there's a financial collapse, that they can take your food and leave you with 3 days worth of food.
Oh, sure.
So if the government is making laws, just recently making laws, then they must have some concern that this might happen.
Right. Well, the Patriot Act, which was supposed to keep us all safe, actually has a lot of little tiny laws that people don't know about. And the president came out a few years ago and mentioned that they can detain you indefinitely without an attorney.
Oh, yeah.
Right, we think, well, that has to do with
without telling anyone that they're detaining you.
Right.
You might be on a milk jug.
They can just take you and say, hey, Patriot Act.
Yeah, but they don't have, and I read that law. They don't have to tell your family they took you.
Yeah, they did
You
it.
just be a missing person.
Yeah, they did it under the auspice of, well, if there's a terrorist attack. Well, what if it's not a terrorist attack? What if it's the economic collapse? That law's still there, and they can use it as they choose.
Yeah, and they even added recently, they said they can kill you if you're an enemy combatant. But
right.
It's really vague. They can just name you an enemy combatant.
Right.
So.
Yep. Yeah, the president came out and said that, and there you go.
So
what else?
If you're an enemy of the state,
when the
they
president
can do what they want.
When the president comes out and says, "Well, we can shoot you or detain you, and there's nothing you can do about it,"
that's no freedom there.
Right. So economic collapse. You think the government's going to be your buddy? Probably not.
So.
But on a good case scenario, the best case scenario is that we'll just become a third world country, where there will be the super duper rich.
We
and
like China.
Super poor. Right.
We like China.
Right, exactly.
So.
That's the best case scenario that I can see.
Yeah, that's the only way a country can stay stable is if you have super poor and a few rich.
Right. So it's going to be economic collapse or third world country. We're heading that way. What do you like better?
Or FEMA camps.
With FEMA camps?
See, I wrote FEMA camps, and the reason why is because back in the Great Depression, the government was a lot smaller. U.S. government was not as powerful. It was a great country. The United States is an awesome country, but there's a difference. Back then, it was a smaller government. So what happened when the Great Depression came? People took care of each other.
Right.
Churches became very popular. People donated. People actually opened up their own. People lived together. They actually made poor farms. People just did this all on their own. It was freedom. If you look at today, we're less free. Everything's big government. The government has a law on everything. They control everything. They have their foot in the door in everything. It's big government.
Oh, they tap your phones. They look on the internet. They're free to look into anything at any time.
They can take you now.
They can take you without a lawyer, without even telling anybody. They can tap your phones.
And they actually have a law on this. This is law. So if something happens, they can round us all up like cattle and put us in FEMA camps. And they're saying it's going to be done out of generosity, and it's their control over us to keep us healthy. But there's no freedom in it.
Exactly.
So if something does go down, they're just going to start rounding people up out of the best interest of us, they're saying.
Oh, sure.
So,
well, there's like I mentioned before about the Ebola. tomorrow they could be like, oh, Ebola's coming, so we're all going to have to keep you all safe and put you in warehouses.
Yeah.
Why not? The laws are there. The laws were written so they could do that, so they must be expecting it.
And I think there's like 2 FEMA camps in every state. There's at least 2. I think some states have 4. I think California has 4. I'm not sure. I know Pennsylvania has 2. And they, like, within the last 5 years, they've actually upgraded them all. They've spent like $19 to $20 million upgrading all these facilities. And there's people that work at these places where there's no people.
Right.
And they're all connected to the railroads. And there's these places. They exist. The taxpayers pay for them to be upkept. And they are there in case something happens. You can look it up. We're not trying to scare anyone, but
no, you can go on the FEMA website. It's all there.
Yeah, that is an organization, and if that's like one thing I'm worried about, because look at Katrina. What happened down in New Orleans? How bad did they screw that up?
Oh my goodness.
That was FEMA. They screwed that up bad.
They couldn't even get bottled water to people.
So,
and they couldn't even get a bottled water to people, in New Orleans during Katrina. Take a look at the American Care Act. Now the government, add another bean in the pile or hole in the dam. They're forcing everybody to get this health care. Things people don't need. Like, Jack, you're going to have to pay for, going to the gynecologist.
Yeah.
You don't go to a gynecologist, but you're going to be paying it.
But what you're saying is that all these bills are adding up that people can't afford.
Right, exactly.
And when people can't afford things, it actually hurts everyone else. So, that's like recently, I'm getting rid of my cable just to save money.
Sure.
So people do what they have to do to survive.
Yeah, I got rid of my smartphones.
Yeah.
Went to dumb phones.
And the federal government, they don't get rid of nothing. They just keep adding and adding.
Hey, wait, do you hear that?
Yeah.
Do you hear the sirens?
They're sirens.
Maybe it started.
We're outside.
Maybe the financial collapse has happened.
Oh my goodness. You hear? I can't believe it. We're outside doing a live show, and there's fire engines and...
That's crazy. I know, it started economic collapse. We started it by doing the show, apparently. Somebody heard about it on the internet. But hey, that CIA analyst, Mr. Rickards, when did you tell me, Jack? When we've discussed this for months and probably over years.
For like 2 years.
When did you say the collapse was going to happen?
I was thinking in February, March.
That's exactly what he said. The CIA analyst predicts that in March 2015, the government expects this to happen. Not he thinks it might happen. The government expects it to happen.
I told you that 2 years ago.
Right. And that, you pinpointed it a while ago.
So.
And that's only 5 months from now, so, hopefully, you're listening to this and it's April or May in 2015 and everything's okay.
And I'm not going to get into how I came up with that day, because I had all these statistics that I wrote down on my own. But
you're not a CIA analyst, are you?
Yeah, no. But I didn't know. I never read that article, so that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, it's a newer article.
He's picking the same time I picked? Oh, my goodness.
Right. And even Shelley mentioned around the same time.
Oh, wow.
I don't really have any feelings, spiritual feelings about money or what you can do to prepare so much on a spiritual sense. But luckily, we have our alternate reality expert here, Shelley, with us today. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, great. We just wanted to ask you a few quick questions. Because we got to bring the paranormal, not the paranormal, but the spiritual with the money.
Sure.
So let's jam together spiritual and money.
Sure.
Is when money, mathematics, the way it goes together and it fits like gears of a clock, right?
Sure.
So what, is there any energy behind that? Is there any energy behind mathematics?
There is energy behind it. The saddest thing, though, is this whole economy is based on fear. And human beings are made to work together. Everybody was given a special skill. And it was through fear that we had to use things like trade. In the first place, if we all work together, everybody has a different talent. That's why many people are very unhappy, because they're in professions or trades that aren't what they were built to do on the inside. So if you'd take everybody and have them do what they are on the inside and work together, it would be perfection. We wouldn't need trade. There wouldn't be fear that we wouldn't have, because it would all come together as one unit. There would be perfection, that everybody would have what they needed. But unfortunately, because of our fear, we tend to collect and have a fear that we won't have enough. Well, because of that, our economy goes on, based more and more on fear and greed, because we're heading the wrong direction. And so at this point, this is where we are, and there will be the lesser and those that have less, and it's based on fear, and it's a very negative thing. And many people unhappy with what they're doing, but the whole thing could be turned around in a heartbeat. But who's going to be the first one to put down their shield? You know, and say, oh, no, I'll be the one. I'll give to everyone else. So unfortunately, until that time, we'll be dealing with situations like this. But yes, there is energy behind it, a lot of fear and so forth. But I think just through relaxing, even if it has to be this way, and focus on loving and giving as much as you can.
So if things go a little haywire in the economy, if everybody relaxes bit by piece, bit by bit, minute by minute, day by day, we can patch it and get through it.
Well, I think we'll come back to an equilibrium anyway. That's just what we do as human beings. I mean, you can't be in a state of fear all the time. We're built on love. We're built to love, you know, and built for that perfection. So it'll even itself out in time.
Huh. Well, very good. Well, I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So what do you think about that, Jack?
I think that's spot on. Like, if something does happen, that's the only way out of it. People have to work together. And I liked what she said about greed, like, fuels this economy. You have people that make so much money that I've seen movies about, like, see that movie, The Wolf on Wall Street,
right?
The true story, Leonardo DiCaprio's in. He was making so much money off the backs of other people, like, he was just scheming money off people, that he was wasting it and burning it. Right. Where it could have actually helped someone. He could have gave money away to people. Like, people that have so much, they should help out more.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't believe in taxes like that way, but just if people just be better people.
Right. Absolutely.
Like, you don't need the government to tell you to be a better person. We need a better a culture, really.
Sure.
The culture has changed where people want to be greedy. It's like cool to be greedy now. So,
well, yeah, and times are different too. With the age of the internet, you know, everybody knows everything instantly. You know, that has a lot to play with it. But I know economic collapse, we like trump it up. You know, we hype it up a little bit for the show. But, you know, we don't want it to happen. We want people to be sensible and giving and, you know, charitable. But there are things you can do with your money, with your physical money.
Yeah.
You can invest in hard assets, like Warren Buffett, right? They asked him, what is he investing in now, right? Because the times there's so much turmoil. He's investing in railroads, physical...
For the FEMA camps.
For the FEMA camps. Oh, Jack, you always have a sunny disposition on these things. Well, I don't think that's where he was going with, but could be. Coal and wheat and metals. So, yeah, FEMA camps. Yeah, we're screwed. Just forget about it, you know. I was trying to paint a rosy picture, but... You know, just start.
Those guys on top, they get there for a reason. They're not nice guys.
Just start digging a hole now. You know, well, maybe to bury your money in it. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing I want to say: we don't really need money. Like Shelley was saying, if people work together. Well, I mean, look at ants. They're just little bugs. They don't really have much thought, I don't think, but they work. They're like really good working animals. but they work together. They all have a job, and they're simple. So that's the key to if economic collapse comes. The best thing to do is make yourself simple. I'm not saying act like an ant. Don't be like communist. You have a job, blah blah blah. I mean, like, make things simple. The simpler things are, you'd be so surprised how happy you could be when things are simple. I mean, look at people in the Amazon rainforest. They have no like technology at all, and they are rated as the happiest people in the world. Like, these people running around in loincloths. They don't have nothing. All they have is their family and their way of life. But they are very happy. You don't need to have a lot of stuff to be happy in this world.
Nope.
We get used to things. Just like go back to the gasoline. You get used to a high price. It's,
right.
Like, it's just natural to just get used to what your surroundings are.
You just fit it into your budget and you move on. Maybe you take, from something else.
But, I mean, imagine this. Something goes wrong. Yeah, relax. Just be without. You need food, you have to become a farmer. If you need food, you can't go to Walmart and buy it. What you got to do, you have to learn how to grow crops and learn how to do it. There was a time in this country where everybody was farmers. Like 90% of the people were farmers.
Right.
We'd have to go back to that time period where everyone was a farmer. People traded with each other. It's like, I'm going to get some cows. So I have this cattle. I got milk and meat. You got a wheat field. Let's trade.
Right.
I'll give you some bread for my meat. There's no money involved, and then we'll be happy. So you just...
Yeah, I think that's a government plane watching this film.
I mean, but just because if the economy collapses, doesn't mean the way of life will change, but you can still be a happy person.
Yeah, you could go, like you said, trade and barter. Everybody will go back to that.
You'd have to work, though. You wouldn't be able to get a welfare check.
Right.
To go get some Cheetos. I mean, you'd have to learn how to grow some potatoes or something. So,
do you think the government has the ability or the will to fix it before it collapses?
Here's the thing. The government has got so big. They are the only thing and it is changing faces, but there's things that we don't know about the government. They hide so much from us now.
Right.
Like, back 100 years ago, they were hiding a little bit, but it was so much smaller. People were actually in charge of the government. Now there's so many faces we don't know. There's so many behind we get this in other shows. They have like black ops. Like, they have so many secrets they hide from us. Like aliens. Everyone knows that they hide alien stuff from us, but
oh, I know.
The government is there for the government.
Yeah, now it is.
It's not really there for the people. Like, we elect people. There might be local people, local governments that care, but when you get it's like a whole different realm. It's like you got central government and you got local government.
The local government might be the one to pull us through.
Yeah.
Because the federal government and the state governments, federal government, forget about it. State governments, maybe. Local might be your best bet.
Yeah, so... When it comes down to it, like, the government would have to get smaller. So, you get back to smaller governments.
Right. Oh, that's just the start.
So...
Right. A lot of things are going to... The too big to fail banks are going to have to be, we're going to have to have another system.
But people say it can never happen. But look at Rome.
Oh, sure.
Rome was huge.
Right.
And it fell.
Every civilization that came before us collapsed and made new ones.
And I remember,
so why are we any different?
And they overspend. They overgive them what they don't have. So...
Oh, well, yeah. Like at the beginning of the show, we listed all the things that are piling up. What's the next thing to pile up, Jack? I don't know.
It's kind of like the kid running for high school. Like, I'm going to offer you the world. I'll give you all A's on your test.
Exactly.
If you elect me a student president or something. I mean, it's like there's some things people got to learn that there's things that we just can't get in this world without work. So...
Right. And now I agree that, we should provide, for the sick, and even help out the poor to get them back on their feet. But we just can't keep on continuing having a whole country of, people that just want and don't want to work.
Oh, yeah.
And give. Shelley has something to say, actually.
There's a reason behind that, though. The reason this whole thing keeps going bad is because we're each an important part, working together as part of the whole. You had mentioned ants. The reason that works isn't because it's communistic. Each of those ants understands they're part of what makes a whole that works.
Yeah.
That they're each very, very important. So none of them are like, oh, you know what, just bring me my food today. It's in their mind that their perfection, their survival, their happiness is based on each of them giving what they have to the best of their ability. And if we would get that here, if everybody gives their best, because where does happiness come from? How many dollars, how many suits, how many cars would you have to be happy?
Right.
There isn't a number. I mean, it could go forever. There's never enough. But if you're giving everything in yourself to your best ability, not only for your own welfare, but we're built out of love. So it's to the best of your ability with those around you. And then that energy comes back to you that you're sustained too, but you're fully sustained and that you're doing what you were built to do. The happiness would be everywhere. So it's a moot point. It will go on like this forever and forever because the wheels don't work together. They're just grinding against each other based out of fear and greed. So by working together, even if you have next to nothing, love the people next to you. Give of your heart then. That's what brings happiness anyway. I think the less we have, the happier we'll learn to be. As long as we're working with what we've got, not only for us, but for those around us. Because that's how it makes a whole, and then we're all sustained.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah,
make things simple. Do, like Shelby was saying, do the best you can do. Be the best person you can be. If you have a talent, use it. That's something I really believe in. If you have a talent, you have to use it. Because when you don't use a talent, it's kind of like this is even in the Bible. It's like you will suffer for not using your talents. But if you use the talents you have, you actually gain new talents. You increase in talents. So,
right. Well, I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, don't value hard work. They're like, well, work is hard, and if I don't do it, I'll be happy because I won't go through the hardship. But going through the hardship brings you the good stuff.
But they may be doing the wrong thing, too. If I was meant to be an architect, and I go out there and I decide that I'm going to dig ditches, but I was meant to be an architect and that's in my soul, digging ditches, I could make myself happy, but I'm not fully giving of my talents.
they're just doing it for money now.
Yeah, but if I'm meant to be a ditch digger, it's not going to be that hard work. I'm going to feel very sustained at the end because I was built for that. I'm that piece of the puzzle. We each have something like that inside of us, a talent. No matter who you are, you bring something to the whole of the energy that is us in this manifestation.
Huh. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, kind of reminds me, I don't know if, Martin Luther King, he always, one of his famous lines was, well, in this world where we can't always, I can't give him word for word, but he said, whatever you do the best of what you do. If you're a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper. If you're the president of something, be the best president you can be. If you're a teacher, be the best teacher you can be. If you find your talent, when you get the chance to do it, do the best that you can do. And if everybody tries their best, and
well, if there's a reward for one, let's say, you try your best, and the reward for one individual person is, a certain number. We'll get a whole bunch of people doing the same thing. You got a huge amount, of good works that come out of that. One person is great, but if everybody does it, there's no stopping you or the society or your household, for that matter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you just...
And everything doesn't have to always... You can actually practice this. There's techniques you can do, even not even working, to change, the way someone thinks. let's say you're on a college campus. Like, I remember when I went to college, I said hi to everyone.
Right.
And this is a true story. Like, I think I'm like a nice guy, so, you know, I'm actually I was saying hi to people, and I noticed people didn't say hi to each other.
Huh.
And after a few months, people say, oh, that's a guy who always says hi to everyone.
Yeah.
And he just talks to people. He says hi to people, like strangers. You won't know someone until you talk to them.
Right.
So after a while, I've noticed more people saying hi to each other. It's contagious. When you put good energy out there, it spreads.
Yeah.
So,
and don't be discouraged if you run into somebody that you think you don't like. You know how you judge somebody right away? Like, you meet somebody and you might, I don't like them. Give people a chance. Some of my best friends in life, we started with a fist fight. Like, we'd get together, we'd all be drunk, and we'd have fist fights. But then months later, we were best friends. So give everybody a chance. Just because you might not like somebody, give them a chance.
Yeah. Well, I don't have much more on the economic collapse.
No. Economic collapse, I can't think of anything else. It's been awesome talking about it. I mean, I could probably do like 5 more shows on this, but we don't want to bore the average viewer to death.
Yeah.
I know this isn't a lot paranormal, but, Shelley, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
I mean, you always bring in, when we're talking about something not spiritual,
good perspective.
You always connect it, and we appreciate it.
I always learn something from you guys, too.
Yeah, we're
I
kings.
focus a little more on the spiritual. It's good to have the, the physical.
Yeah,
learn a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're definitely kings of BS, that's for sure. But, yeah, that's it, Jack. That's all I got.
All right, so go to paranormalroads.com. You can listen to all of our shows. Mike's got some books you can Google. Alien Search Guide.
Right.
And my son's outside. We're actually outside. I'm just looking at my son right. He's playing in the dirt. So,
yeah, you want, just to end it, just look at your kids, look at your family. You want the best for them. We can make it through this.
Yeah, all you need. So what do you need to survive? Make it simple. You need to eat. You need a shelter.
Right.
So as long as you provide a shelter for your family, you got food for them, you should be okay. As long as you got each other. If you don't have anyone, maybe it's time to make some friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that neighbor that you think you don't like, he might end up being he or she might end up being your best friend.
And
so reach out, see what people need,
and use your talents, because in an economic collapse, your talents will be very useful. And you may not even think it's of a use, but there's we have a friend that's a botanist. I always told him, I was like, man, if there was an economic collapse, there's not many botanists now these days, but you'd be really important because you tell us what we can eat and stuff, and how they grow food and stuff. So.
Oh, sure. The priorities in life would change really quick.
Yeah. So, well, there's a lot more you guys can research things on survival, economic collapse. But I'm going to say goodbye. This is Jack. This is paranormalroads.com.
All right, this is Mike, and thanks again, Shell.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, bye.